I accepted a construction job in rural Alberta, uncovering sinister rules that haunt the site. Jake stood at the edge of the site, the sun sinking low, leaving shadows stretching long across the ground. The foreman grinned beneath the brim of his worn hat, a smile that felt more like a warning than an invitation. "Just remember," he said, his voice silky smooth, "follow the rules, no work after dark, stay on the marked paths, and for God's sake, don't look at the woods." A chill crawled up Jake's spine, but the desperation for money overrode his instinct. His family was counting on him. The evening air felt heavy in the small, isolated camp. His fellow workers, rough around the edges locals, exchanged uneasy glances, their laughter tinged with nervousness. One of them, Billy, said in a hushed tone, "You don't want to cross the trees, man. They swallow people whole." Jake laughed it off, thinking these rural superstitions were just that, rural superstitions. Yet, as the sky darkened, he couldn't shake off the prickling sensation on the back of his neck that it happened when the last rays of sunlight dwindled. The wind shifted, rustling the gnarled branches in the woods, making the shadows dance. Jake stood rooted. The whispers, soft at first, echoed through the trees, wrapping around him. "Stay on the path." He shook his head, dismissing it as an overactive imagination. Yet, every shadow that flickered felt like eyes watching him. The first night on the job, chaos erupted like a freak storm. Billy stumbled, a cruel slip that ended with a sickening thud and silence. Panic pulsed through the crew as they gathered around, breathless and wide-eyed. "Unreal," a worker muttered, "he never stepped off the path." The foreman's eyes glinted with something sinister. He clapped his hands cheerfully. "Let us clean it up, men. Back to work." Panic settled in Jake's gut. There was something off, and now the night felt oppressive, filled with malevolence. Jake learned that Billy's wife was already concerned about the site's history. Missing workers, whispered warnings in the community, an unnerving silence about it all. "The foreman has been here too long," she warned, biting her lip. The stories clawed at Jake's sanity. He needed the paycheck, but at what price? A storm rolled in, the wind howling like a beast, biting at their bones, isolating them further from the world. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake felt the whispers grow louder, now mixing with the storm's roar. His heart raced with every crack of thunder. Workers began to vanish. One by one, they slipped away into the shadows, absorbed by the horror lurking within the trees. Jake's hands trembled as he grasped his tools, the weight of betrayal heavy in the air. The foreman's smile had twisted into something predatory. Each day, he observed their every move. The woods were alive with a breath that beckoned softness beneath the veil of horror. Torn between the community's dark secret and his burning desire to escape, Jake stood at the marked path's edge. The trees murmured his name, their roots curling, weaving a curse. His body screamed for him to run, but the woods promised safety, their shadows flickering like twisted promises. Just as he took a step back, a chilling voice broke the silence, drawing him in deeper. It whispered through the darkness, would he heed the warning or succumb to the snare? Jake's breath hitched in his throat as the voice slithered between the trees, its tone beckoning yet laced with malice. The winds howled, and he found himself fighting an irrational urge to venture deeper into the oppressive woods. Fear gripped his heart as he recalled the warnings so many had vanished, failures to heed the rules echoing in his thoughts like a public service announcement gone wrong. Suddenly, the clamor of the workers erupted nearby, pulling Jake back from the brink. He turned to see a handful of remaining crew members, faces drawn tight, a mix of confusion and panic in their eyes. Some were yelling frantically, waving their arms, an urgent call for everyone to retreat. But just as quickly, the foreman appeared, his presence dousing the frenzy with an eerie calm. Come now, lads. Where's the fear? We're just getting started. He chuckled, a sound that reverberated with ominous energy beneath the thunderous sky. Something monstrous lurked within his playful words, stirring up a cocktail of dread and defiance in Jake. The dim light cast long shadows across the ground, distorting their figures into grotesque shapes. One worker, Roy, with hollow cheeks and wild eyes, stumbled forward, Billy's gone. He was right there, just before the storm hit. A collective gasp swept through the group. Whispers swirled like the storm above, coiling tightly around Jake's mind. Find him, commanded the foreman, his gaze piercing through the chaos. He's gone off the path. Someone go after him. For a moment, the men fidgeted, each refusing to take action. Fear of the woods loomed larger than loyalty. It was as if the moment hung heavy, suspended in time. Then, an idea struck Jake. He couldn't just stand idle knowing that his coworker might be lying helpless, lost somewhere in that dreadful abyss. No. He shouted, his voice a raw rasp. We can't leave him. I'll go. His body felt alien to him, pushing through resistance as he stepped toward the edge of the trees. The utter silence that followed his declaration was more suffocating than any storm. Don't do it, man. Roy grabbed Jake's arms with shaking hands, but the determined look on Jake's face made Roy falter. Please, it's not worth it. Without a word, Jake shook him off. Adrenaline surged through him, a lethal cocktail of fear and duty. The trees swayed as he approached, breathing an impatient sigh into the air. Stepping off the path felt like stepping off the edge of a cliff, each breath taut with anxiety, electric with the palpable foreboding that filled the clearing. Billy! He called, voice wavering, swallowed by the hungry silence of the woods. The whisper returned, wrapping around him like a cold blanket. The trees creaked ominously, alive with presence, almost taunting him. Stay with us, the woods whispered, their voices dripping with honeyed poison. A sudden rustle to his left sent his heart racing, and without thinking, Jake turned. But the darkness bore no evidence of Billy. Only shadows. Seconds stretched agonizingly as he strained to listen, an unsettling thought gnawing away at him. What if the path itself held the answers they needed? But it was too late. He had already stepped into the murky depth of the woods, where light dared not shine. Then, just as he turned to make his way back, a loud snap echoed through the silence like a gunshot. His heart plummeted. Something was moving through the dark, creeping closer, and the whispers erupted into a cacophony, tumbling over one another, urging him to stay to join the abyss. Jake's body tensed, caught between the urge to flee and the instinct to face the horror that awaited him. What awaited him just beyond the shadows? He had dared to step off the path. Now, as the dark closed in around him, he had to face the unfathomable truth lurking within. As a sudden chill cut through the air, Jake felt the ground shift beneath him. Panic surged in his chest. He sensed he was being watched not just by nature, but something far more sinister. And before he could scream, a figure shifted in the darkness, its eyes glinting like prepared steel. You shouldn't have come, it rasped, the voice layered with malevolence. Would this be the end, or was there more to uncover beneath the darkness? The figure loomed larger, shrouded in shadows, impossibly still yet radiating a menacing energy that coiled around Jake. Fear froze him for a heartbeat, his mind racing with frantic thoughts. What was this thing? Turn back now, it hissed, the words curling around him like smoke, heavy and intoxicating. Jake's instincts screamed to run, to dash back toward the path he'd so foolishly left behind. But the ground felt alive beneath him, roots snaking toward his feet, anchoring him in place. Billy? Jake croaked, forcing the name through his parched throat, a plea that hung suspended in the air. Where is he? The darkness shifted slightly, and he caught a fleeting glimpse of a contorted face, twisted in macabre triumph. Billy, didn't he heed the call, the creature rasped. He chose to stay. Suddenly, the whispering trees amplified their chorus, chanting his name along with a multitude of lost voices. Jake staggered back from the sound, overwhelmed. No. He wouldn't. He shouted, desperation breaking the tension in his voice. But the figure only smiled. The woods give, Jake. And they take. The laughter that erupted from its mouth was low, like rolling thunder. It echoed across the space, stirring the leaves, sending chills down his spine. Jake's heart thundered in return, each beat a countdown. He struggled to break free from the thrall of the moment, but fear held him captive. Was he the next to disappear? The thought gripped him like a vice. Without warning, a sharp crack sliced through the air, a branch breaking. Was something else approaching? Jake's breath quickened. He pivoted, searching the darkness, but the shadows danced too swiftly, flickering like insidious flames. Choose. The creature urged, voice playful yet laced with venom. Stay and join the echo, or leave and forget what you've witnessed. Forget? Jake's mind buzzed, grappling with the absurdity. Memories of his co-workers surfaced, the laughter, the camaraderie, flashes of ordinary life now tainted by ominous dread swirling around him. No. He couldn't let the woods take him. He wouldn't be another lost voice. Thinking quickly, he stumbled backward until the roots released him, spilling him onto the ground. His heart hammered in his chest as he turned and ran, his feet pounding against the earth, propelling him away from the malicious whispers and the haunting laughter. Foolish child. You can't escape. The creature taunted behind him, each word slicing through the dark like a blade. Jake charged back through trees that now loomed like sentinels. Shadows prowled, reaching out in long thin fingers. Forest sounds morphed into an oppressive silence, broken only by the cacophony of his heartbeat. Listen. Each crackle of twigs beneath his foot was an accusation of his choice. Every rustle in the bushes felt like breath on his neck. Billy! He shouted, panic clawing at him, desperate for some sign. But the answer was the wood's cold embrace, empty and treacherous. Suddenly, he stumbled into a clearing. Moonlight spilled in, illuminating twisted trees like skeletal arms. And among them, a figure lay crumpled on the ground. Billy? Jake's voice trembled, hope battling against despair. But as he rushed closer, he froze. The eerie stillness of the body felt wrong. Stay, don't leave. It was Billy's voice, hushed and haunting, as if it blended into the very fabric of the forest. A wet, choking sound escaped his lips, and Jake realized with gaping horror Billy wasn't breathing. Something shifted behind him, a presence closing in. The creature echoed through the trees once more. You shouldn't have come for him. The laughter rang out again, with dread constricting his throat. Jake turned to face the shadows, knowing that the end might have just begun. What other horrors awaited him in the haunting grasp of the woods, and would he escape before the whispers claimed him, too? Jake's heart raced, pounding in his ears like a war drum. The clearing felt suffocating, the moonlight casting an eerie halo around Billy's lifeless form. The forest encroached, an omnipresent danger lurking just beyond the edges of the illuminated space. Billy! Jake shouted again, desperation clawing at his throat. Each syllable echoed back, twisted. Insidious laughter floated through the trees, chilling his spine. This isn't over, he muttered, forcing his legs to move, inching closer to his friend, though the ground felt heavier with every step. No more. Don't look for me. Billy's whisper curled through the air, a sickening caress, laden with despair. Once vibrant and full of laugh, now his voice was a haunting echo that lingered like a shadow. Jake knelt beside him, shaking. Closer now, he recoiled at the sight. Pale skin stretched tight over bones, eyes hollow and dark against the pale moonlight. No. Every part of him screamed in denial. He wanted to wake up from this nightmare, shake off the dread and the shadows. But there it was, a clawing realization that twisted his gut. Neither nature nor any primal fear wanted him to leave. Suddenly, the silence shattered as a rustle broke through the air, a low growl, no, a whisper, coiling around him, tightening like a noose. Jake jolted, spinning around. The dark shadows swirled, growing more aggressive, more alive, pressing against him from all sides. "Join the others, Jake." The creature hissed, its voice slithering like smoke under his skin. "Come closer. Feel the embrace of the woods." Rage surged through him. He wouldn't join them. Not now. Not like this. He stumbled back to his feet, heart hammering like thunder, and knelt beside Billy once more. "Wake up. Fight." Jake's plea fell into the indifferent night, swallowed whole by the trees. Behind him, a dark form writhed, pulsing with twisted glee. The creature loomed, more defined in the shadows, its grin widening, teeth sharp against the night. "Will you abandon your friend then, boy?" It crooned, and in the low light, its eyes shimmered with liquid malice. "Leave him to join the whispers or become one of them yourself." For a moment, everything stilled. The forest listened, anticipation crackling in the air like static electricity. Jake's mind raced. "Stay. Leave. No. I will not abandon him," he yelled, rising defiantly, teeth gritted. In that moment, the woods seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a deafening roar, the trees thrashed, their branches whipping wildly, as if festering with rage. The laughter erupted again, booming from all around, hellish, mocking. Jake turned away from the creature, toward the path he had come from, though it felt as if the woods had shifted overnight. Where was the way out? Vines shot toward him, wrapping around his ankles. He stumbled. "Let go of me!" he screamed, tearing at the creeping flora. The ground felt alive beneath him, pulling him into its depths. As he wrenched free, the creature howled, furious. "Stay and join. Become part of the night." It lunged toward him, hungry. Just then, Jake felt an ice-cold breath on the back of his neck. He nearly froze again, terror rooting him to the spot. But the instinct to survive kicked in. He couldn't let this thing take him, too. Clenching his fists, he lunged forward into the shadows of the trees, pushing against the weight of despair and darkness. Footsteps thundered behind him. He tore through the underbrush, branches snagging at his clothes and skin. What's the way out? He gasped, desperate for a miracle. The whispers returned, calling his name, luring him back, promising peace. "Remember us, Jake. You can't run forever." The creature chased him, each step echoing with the cries of the damned. Just as Jake felt his resolve wavering, a flicker of shape caught his eye. A narrow sliver of moonlight peeked through dense thickets, a gap in the trees. That he launched himself toward it, heart racing, blood thundering in his ears. But as he dove, raw fear enveloped him. The shadows reached out, clawing, pulling him back. His body screamed against the pull of the tendrils of the woods, desperate for freedom, and then, just like that, he was through. The cold air bit against his skin, and he stumbled, crashing through the underbrush into a forgotten dirt road. It felt like salvation until he turned back, gasping for breath only to see blackness crawling in the wake he left behind. The laughter echoed, distant but growing nearer. "Now you're starting to understand," it slithered. There's no escape. As the trees began to close in around him again, Jake's breath hitched. Was there truly no way out? He stood at the edge of the unknown, with shadows blossoming behind him. What had he unleashed in those woods, and would he ever be free? Jake's pulse throbbed in his ears, drowning out the whispers from the tree-line. The cold bite of the wind reminded him he was alive, but he felt utterly trapped. Breathing heavily, he scanned the dirt road that stretched before him, a thin ribbon of escape. Each direction seemed a labyrinth, but he knew he couldn't stay here. Think. He muttered, forcing himself to concentrate. Behind him, the laughter grew louder, a cacophony of madness that teased his sanity. The darkness hung back for now, but it pulsed, an entity waiting for him to falter. With clenched fists, Jake turned abruptly to the right, the dirt underfoot crunching as he sprinted. The light from the moon felt distant, it hung like a cruel joke, illuminating paths cloaked in shadows. He was no longer just running from the creature, he was running into it, towards something that he couldn't yet see or comprehend. Suddenly, the road split into two, and panic shot through him. He hesitated. Right or left? The whispers seeped into his mind, a sinister harmony that twisted his thoughts. Left is escape, it murmured, but as he glanced down that way, shadowy figures seemed to crawl among the trees, beckoning him to join. No! He shouted, shaking his head violently. He didn't dare listen to them. The right path beckoned as if it held something more tangible. A faint glow shimmered at the distance. He bolted down this unexplored route, hope battling fear with each stride. The terrain began to shift. The dirt road turned rocky and uneven, the shadows gaining more dimensions as he stumbled. A surge of branches caught at his clothing, still hungry, still feral. He felt it now, a thrum beneath his feet, a pulsing heartbeat of the earth that matched his own frantic rhythm. What the hell is this place? He whispered, unease curling around his mind like smoke. Ahead, the dim light flickered. It was probably nothing but a trick of the forest, a mirage taunting him from the safety of the unknown. Yet, instinct urged him forward. What if it was the way out? What if Jake? A voice rang out. He skidded to a halt, heart in his throat. The familiar timbre, sweet and soothing. Billy? Jake, I'm here. The voice echoed back. It was faint but undeniably real. Staring at the light, he fought against the urge to cave to the whispering shadows around him. Billy's voice filled him with determination. How could he not go toward it? Without thinking, he dashed toward the flickering light. Each step echoed agony, each breath became heavy with dread, and yet as he approached, he realized it wasn't just a glow. It was coming from a cabin, nestled in the trees like a black heart in the wilderness. The wooden structure looked worn and decrepit, a mere shadow of what it once might have been. Its window panes shimmered with that same eerie light, but shadows danced within, their shapes shifting like the reflections of ghostly figures. Billy? Jake's voice was a desperate croak. He didn't want to be alone. With shaky hands, he pushed open the creaking door. Inside, the light winked, revealing dusty shelves lined with faded photographs of faces wearing expressions of pure sorrow intermingled with infernal grins. A chill gripped him as he scanned the room. Jake, help. The voice drifted closer, but the space felt empty, the walls closing in on him like a vice. The shadows from the photographs seemed to stir, writhing with whispers, beckoning him toward darkness. Don't listen, don't look. He shouted, backing away from the walls. Yet there was Billy's voice again, echoing through time, tempting him with promises no one should keep. As if concerted, the shadows and whispers grew more intense, blending into a single haunting melody. Join us, Jake, embrace the shadows, help us. A sudden crack of sinewy fingers clutched at his conscience, and he felt the overwhelming pull toward the abyss. The room spun, despair and hope collided violently, and Jake could feel himself slipping. Just as he was about to surrender, he caught a glimpse of something, an old key on a table, glinting under the dim light, a promise of escape against the encroaching darkness. But was it worth everything he might lose? In that moment, as shadows crept closer, he faced a choice that felt more like a trap. Would he dare reach for it, or would he yield to the everlasting gloom behind him? The door slammed shut behind him, trapping him inside. Now the real horror begins, the voice hissed, rising from the very walls around him. What lay beyond? Would he ever find Billy again, or had he entered a realm of nightmares? The key hung before him, trembling in the air like a promise unfulfilled. Would he dare grasp it, to unlock the truth hidden in the horror? The whispering shadows surged forward, enveloping him in an unbearable haze of despair and dread. Jake's heart raced, pounding against his ribs like a trapped animal. He could almost feel the bite of the key in his palm, reassuring and cold, its presence a flickering beacon amid the darkness. Grab it. The voice urged, a dissonant echo grazing his ear. It was so familiar, yet so wrong. Billy! He screamed, his voice thin and trembling. With a swift motion, he lunged for the key. The moment his fingers closed around it, a blast of icy wind surged through the cabin, as if the shadows were shrieking in anguish. Jake felt the world tilt, like a seesaw caught in a storm. The photographs lining the walls twisted, faces warping into grotesque forms, smiles stretching beyond the limits of humanity. One photograph caught his eye, a familiar face drawn tight with fear, eyes wide, mouth open in silent agony. It was Billy. A chill snaked down Jake's spine, his stomach knotting at the horror of realization that he turned the key in his hand, desperate for an escape, yet reluctant to relinquish its promise. "Put it in the lock, Jake." The voice hissed, seducing him with urgency. A dull throb in his temple forced him to take a step back. "Where are you?" Jake shouted, trying to pierce through the suffocating darkness. The air seemed thick, pressing down on him, squeezing the breath from his lungs. "Help me," the voice trailed off, a haunting whisper mingling with the shadows that danced around him, brushing against his arms with chill fingers. The cabin had transformed into a nightmarish maze. The furniture loomed, twisted and gnarled, resembling claws ready to snatch him away. He staggered backward, barely registering that he had backed into a wall. "I have to," he stammered, but the shadows hissed like snakes, their serpentine forms slithering closer. The key glittered in his palm, a tiny revolution against the overwhelming pitch of the gloom. "Unlock the door, Jake. It's your only chance." Suddenly, the shadows coalesced into a swirling mass, their individual forms melding into one, a pulsating, malevolent entity that moved with a fluidity that belied its true nature. Jake swallowed hard, his fear palpable. As he trembled, the pulsating force of the shadows drew closer, almost affectionate in their approach yet menacing in intent. He felt a tug, something pulling at his consciousness, urging him to surrender. "Join us, Jake." "No." He shot back, heart racing even faster. His resolve sharpened. He needed to act. With a decisive breath, he pushed forward, searching for the source of the keyhole. The walls pulsed rhythmically, aligning with his frantic heartbeat. "Where is the lock?" he shouted, fighting against swimming visions of tormented souls. Suddenly, he spotted a rotting door behind a shelf, its surface marred with age but glistening wildly under the unnatural light. Jake approached, trembling hands raised. The key felt alive, vibrating in his grip, pulling him in its direction. He didn't want to look back into the void, not wanting to see what awaited him in the dark. "Do it!" the voice screeched, a cacophony of urgency. The key slipped into the lock with a satisfying click, the ground trembling beneath him as shadows recoiled. In that moment, he understood the key was not just for the door. It held the weight of consequences he had yet to fathom. Tightening his grip, he twisted the key. With a grind and a wail, the door creaked ajar, revealing nothing but inky blackness beyond. The shadows shrieked, their sorrow morphed into anger, a howling tempest that rattled the cabin's structure. Jake's feet felt glued to the ground. Something lengthy and clawed reached through the crack, desperate to pull him back. "Run, Jake. Now." He had no choice. With a burst of adrenaline, he tore the door wide open and leapt into the darkness. Air rushed past him, cold and unwelcoming. He tumbled into a world where time felt warped, and the boundaries of reality twisted around him. The shadows lashed out, trying to claim him even in his flight. There was no turning back. Whatever lay on the other side awaited him. The whispers faded into a howling wind, and just as Jake hit the ground, something icy wrapped around his ankle, ready to drag him down. What awaited him on the other side? Did he escape one nightmare only to plunge into another? Jake gasped, the chill gripping his ankle like a vice. Fear shot through him, paralyzing his thoughts. He struggled, his heart racing as he kicked and fought against the unseen force trying to tether him back to the suffocating gloom. The icy grip slipped, but every breath he took was laden with panic, the air thick and stale that he scanned the surroundings. It was bleak, endless desolation, the ground hard and cracked like parched earth under a relentless sun. No trees, no buildings, just a vast expanse of brown and gray that seemed to stretch forever. He scrambled to his feet and turned in every direction. Where was he? "Jake," a distant voice echoed, laden with a sense of urgency that sent chills racing down his spine. It was Billy. Out here. In this lifeless wasteland. Jake felt hope ignite in his chest, but it flickered as he felt the shadows pulse against the edges of his vision. "Stay close." Billy's voice grew louder, more desperate, but it felt trapped inside a hollow void, echoing without source. "Billy!" Jake shouted, his lungs burning. He stumbled forward, adrenaline blazing through his veins. The ground felt almost alive beneath his feet. He could feel an unsettling vibration, a rhythm that pulsed in tandem with a wretched heartbeat he could not see. The whispering shadows began to coalesce and shift, gathering like storm clouds overhead. He could see their edges now, moving with purpose, hungry and restless. He sidestepped, glancing down to note his own reflection, a warped visage staring back at him from the ground. It was distorted, eyes darkened by panic, as if a lurking entity concealed behind him was poised to drag him down into darkness. "Jake! We have to end this." The voice pierced through the impending dread. "It's a trap." A fleeting vision of Billy came to him. The boy's expression was hardened, dread replacing the playful outline of his face. "You have to remember." "What do you mean?" He shouted against a surge of blackness. The shadows quivered in response, wrath in their murmurs. They hated this sound of connection, their whispers transforming into growls. "Trust me," Billy called, just beyond reach. Jake's heart raced as he sprinted toward the sound. The landscape shifted, a thick fog rolled in, swallowing the light. He stumbled, eyes darting as the air crackled around him. The shadows twisted, forming figures that beckoned and clawed, urging him to turn back. "Jake! Don't look back." Billy's voice faded as he rushed headlong into the gloom. Time felt elastic, stretching with every pulse of the shadows. Just as he began to slip into deeper darkness, a silhouette emerged, a flicker of warmth in the cold void. Jake realized it was Billy, now solid and determined, standing firm against the encroaching chaos. "Take my hand." Billy extended a trembling arm, eyes fierce with an urgency Jake had never seen before, but as Jake reached out, the shadows roared, their cries morphing into anguished howls, spitting venomous promises. "You can't save him. He's already lost." Jake hesitated, heart pounding like cannon fire. His mind screamed to take the leap, to trust, but the shadows were relentless. They surged, encasing him in a blanket of despair, tendrils of darkness slipping under his skin. "Jake!" Billy called again, his voice threaded with raw determination. "Don't believe them." How could he not? A war raged within him as the shadows leaned in, desperate to claim another sacrifice. Jake inhaled sharply and, with a burst of courage, lunged. Their hands met, a jolt of electricity coursed through him. He felt a connection, a bond that pulled at his very essence. But in that moment, a flurry of feral shadows lunged and wrapped around Billy, dragging him down as if the earth itself had opened to swallow him whole. "No!" Jake screamed, feeling the terrifying weight of despair breaking over him like a wave. As he wrestled against the dark tide, he knew he had a choice to make. Could he pull Billy back from the brink, or would the shadows claim them both? In that heartbeat of hesitation, the shadows rippled, and for a fraction of a second, the murky ground glowed with a deep crimson light as secrets buried beneath beckoned to be unearthed. What lay beneath? Was it truth or another layer of horror just waiting to be revealed? Faced with the decision of existence and annihilation, Jake felt the ground trembling beneath him again. Jake gasped as the crimson glow faded, replaced by an all-consuming darkness. He could feel the chill creeping back around him, tightening its grip like a noose. Heart pounding, he looked around wildly, searching for Billy's silhouette. The ground continued to tremble, vibrating with some unseen horror that crawled beneath the surface. "Billy!" He called out, desperation dripping from his voice. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Every breath felt like an intrusion in this malevolent void. The shadows coiled tighter, whispering his name with twisted malice, echoing his fear. "Jake, you didn't follow the rules," a chilling voice slithered from the darkness. It was deep and taunting, reverberating like the clanging of a hellish bell. "You thought you could come here and walk away unscathed? Rules?" he croaked, bewilderment mingling with terror. "What are you talking about? Each choice resonates ripples through the fabric of this realm. You stepped where you shouldn't have." The voice seemed to fill the air, wrapping around him, suffocating hope. "You think this is a game? It's a trap with far too many players." Suddenly, a flicker darted past his periphery, something small and quick. Jake turned, breath hitching. A figure. Was it Billy? Jake. It was Billy, crawling, his eyes wide with panic, fighting against the thrums of shadow that pulled at him like a violent tide. "It knows. It knows you're here. We have to go. Now. Hold on." Jake shouted, heart tearing at the sight of his friend caught in despair. The shadows seemed to roar, screaming in rage at their connection. The landscape twisted, making it hard to discern where the ground ended and the void began. Jake felt the shadows tug at his psyche, whispering things he couldn't quite grasp, doubts, fears, regrets. They painted the edges of his mind with vivid images of failure. "Don't listen," Billy cried. "They want to pull you down. Please, take my hand again. We can break through." Jake hesitated, eyes glazed with panic as the maelstrom of shadows blurred his vision. If he reached, would he endanger them both? The air thickened, heavy with dread, and the ground throbbed with a sinister heartbeat beneath him. "Jake!" Billy's voice broke through, the last bastion of light in a consuming darkness. "Trust in us. We are stronger together." Gripping his friend's outstretched hand felt like grappling with molten metal. A heat surged through him. But with a sudden jolt, the ground erupted in a shriek, and Jake was pulled sideways, yanked away from Billy's grasp. "No!" he howled, the shadows gnawing at the edges of his sanity. "Choose." The voice of the shadows struck hard, the echoes drowning in a wave of despair. In that moment, Jake felt a flicker of resolve light within him. Maybe the shadows were right, perhaps this was a test, a twisted competition of survival. The darkness rolled like an ocean, cresting and crashing, wanting him to succumb to its depths. With a force born from sheer instinct, Jake summoned all his energy and lunged toward Billy, aiming to bridge the dark divide. He shouted into the chaos, "Hold on. I'm coming." Caught in a battle against the shadows, time stretched unbearably as he fought against the pull that twisted his essence. Darkness clawed at his arms, but he remembered the warmth of Billy's hand, the strength of their bond. It became his anchor. As he reached for him, a blinding flash illuminated the world around them. The shadows recoiled, screaming. Billy's eyes widened as he felt him draw close again. But as their hands connected, a jarring sensation shot through Jake's body, the earth trembling violently. Beneath them, fissures cracked open, exhaling a putrid darkness that began to swallow everything. "Let go!" Billy shouted suddenly, panic taking over his voice. "You can't hold on without." Then the ground beneath them shattered, revealing a yawning abyss. Jake's heart dropped as they both tumbled into the gaping maw. Then silence. Darkness enveloped him completely, and he could no longer feel Billy's presence. Just the deafening void, and the lingering echoes of shadows. Whispering his name, one final promise curling around him like a shroud. What had he chosen? Was there still a way to escape this torment, or was he forever lost within the labyrinth of shadows? Beneath the surface, something stirred and began to awaken. Jake's senses screamed at him from every angle as he plummeted into the abyss, weightless and spinning. The air was thick and viscous, stinging his eyes and burning his throat. He clawed at the darkness, desperation sharpening around him. Everything felt muted, as if he were being submerged in an endless ocean, sound replaced by a deafening silence. Memories of laughter and sunlight flashed through his mind, juxtaposed against the consuming dark. Billy's face twisted in terror, then vanished into shadow. He fought to keep his mind clear, to remember what had happened at the edge of that blighted land. But nothing made sense anymore, only flashes of frantic moments and haunting whispers lingered. Jake, the voice bloomed softly at first, clear and sweet like a bell ringing in a still room. It pulled him backward, tugging at his consciousness with gentle insistence. "Jake, who's there?" He shouted into the void, his words swallowed by despair. "Jake, you need to wake up." The voice began to waver, uncertainty creeping in. It was familiar yet foreign, an echo from his forgotten past. The melody of a memory he couldn't place. That he fell further still, the sensation twisting his stomach into knots. Panic surged, rushing through him like a burst dam. "I need to find Billy!" he screamed, but the shadows laughed, a chorus of sinister glee vibrating through the empty chasm. The darkness began to whirl and swirl as if alive, and suddenly he was not falling anymore but suspended in a claustrophobic space where the boundaries closing around him pulsated with malevolence. "Welcome to the real game," said the amorphous shadows as they morphed into faces that taunted him. Mocks of people he knew, all twisted, their features dripping with disdain. "Who are you?" Jake stammered, backing against the wall as they pressed closer, their laughter like shards of glass slicing through the air. "Choices," one hissed, a twisted smile stretching too wide across its face. "You think you escaped? You invited us into your world." Jake could feel the weight of dread coiling in his stomach. "This is not my fault." "I didn't know." "Not your fault. You entered the darkness willingly." The voices melded into a cacophony that filled the crevices of his mind, dredging up his greatest insecurities. They were now omnipotent, omnipresent. "No," he pleaded, shoving his hands against his ears to block them out. But the whispers crept just below the surface, slithering under his skin. "Get away from me." With a sudden jolt, the shadows recoiled, and a fissure opened before him, revealing a streak of crimson, a stark contrast to the black around him. It pulsed like a beating heart, an invitation to a deeper horror. "That leads to him," a voice called out, seductive and dark. "Do you want to find your friend? Billy?" Jake's heart raced. "Where is he?" "Follow the path, or remain in the darkness forever," it taunted, swirling back into shadows. That he hesitated, uncertainty gnawing at him. Could there be hope within that crimson light? Or would it plunge him even deeper into damnation? He could almost hear Billy's cries, their bond tugging at his soul. With one last breath, Jake moved toward the pulse of red, determination mingling with fear. The shadows shimmered around him, growing restless, as the hunger for his soul intensified. As he edged closer, the ground beneath him quaked violently, and a blinding light burst from the fissure, nearly swallowing him whole. Then, in a flash of brilliance, he stepped through. A dizzying whirlwind of light and darkness engulfed him, and as suddenly as it began, he stumbled out onto solid ground. But he was not alone. The landscape was surreal, twisted and grotesque, the familiar terrain now a nightmare. In the distance, he spotted movement. Shadows splitting from the ground, reshaping themselves into forms he couldn't quite make out. "Jake!" One distant figure called with a voice laced with anguish. "Billy!" Hope surged through him, but something sinister flickered in the corners of his vision, eyes watching, waiting, hungry. Without thinking, he raced toward the figure, heart pounding, breath quickening. But as he drew closer, the figure morphed, becoming something both terrifying and mocking in nature. The ground trembled once more, and a dark wind swept across the landscape. As Jake stepped into the unrealistic gloom, he realized he was not merely being hunted, he had stepped into a stage where the rules were far more dire than ever imagined. Could he save Billy? Or would he foolishly walk into a trap? Time stretched again, but this time he was sure it was chasing him down. Whatever hunted them was closer than it had ever been. And Jake could feel it breathing down his neck. Was escape even possible, or was he fated to join the shadows forever? Jake's heart thundered in his chest as he stood before the twisted figure of Billy, transformed into an echo of sorrow and despair. Shadows lurked like predators in the corners of this bleak landscape, and the air crackled with danger. "Jake! Run!" Billy's voice surged with urgency, snapping Jake out of his daze. Without hesitation, Jake turned and sprinted, adrenaline fueling his every step. He could feel the shadows crawling over the earth, gnashing their teeth as if they tasted his fear. "This way!" Billy called from behind, and Jake locked onto that voice, the only tether to hope amid the suffocating blackness. As they ran, the land shifted again like a living thing, mirroring Jake's racing thoughts. Was this nightmare ever going to end? The earth rocked beneath him, giving way to an abyss that threatened to swallow him whole. Panic clawed at him, but he couldn't afford to lose himself now. A flash of memory sparked in his mind, the way Billy had laughed jokingly while the foreman warned them to stay off the path, how they'd shared dreams of better days. But now those memories darkened, overshadowed by the gravity of their current plight. "What do we do?" Jake shouted, panting heavily, his breath a ragged rasp in the turmoil. "We have to face it," Billy replied, determination cutting through the chaos. "These shadows thrive on your doubts, Jake. You need to believe in us." They reached an outcropping of twisted trees, their gnarled branches beckoning like friendly hands, yet Jake instinctively felt they concealed deeper horrors. "Believe what?" Jake growled in frustration. His heart pounded, thrumming chaos in his veins. The shadows writhed, inching closer, their whispers a storm around them. "Everything wants to drag us down." "Not everything," Billy shot back, resolute. Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, hungry mouths gnashing. "We can't let them decide our end. Together, we are stronger." Together the word echoed. He needed to believe it. They could overcome this, face the darkness that threatened to consume them, but they had to unite their will. They lunged ahead, and just as the shadows reached out, a blinding light erupted from the ground beneath, illuminating the figures they had become. It flooded them with warmth, swirling around like a protective embrace. "Feel it!" Billy shouted, voice urgent yet soothing. "You're not alone." The shadows shrank back from the vibrant glow, howling in rage. Jake pushed forward, grabbing Billy's hand tight. "I want to let you go," he cried, squeezing his eyes shut against the chaos swirling around them. With a surge of strength, they hurled themselves into the heart of the light, their bodies interlocking against the dark forces clawing at their heels. The icy grip of despair dulled, vanishing beneath the warmth of hope and unity. "We're getting out," Billy yelled, confidence bursting forth. They surged toward the rift of light just ahead, abandoning behind all the doubts, the whispers, and the shadows. They had breached the veil. As they broke through the light, a shockwave hit them. A gust of wind tossed them back, pulling them apart for a brief, harrowing moment before the light engulfed both of them. Darkness flickered at the edges, etching fear into their minds, but the unwavering bond between them shone bright as they faced it. Then silence fell. Jake opened his eyes, breathless, crumpled grass beneath him, the earth solid and real. The sun kissed the sky, illuminating the beautiful, clear day. The treacherous woods loomed in the distance, ominous but no longer suffocating. "Billy?" Jake gasped, scanning for his friend. Hope surged as he spotted Billy lying beside him. He reached out, fingers brushing against Billy's, relief flooding his senses as Billy smiled back, a faint glimmer of mischief in his eyes. "It's over, Jake." Jake pulled him to his feet, laughter bubbling up in disbelief. "We made it." The shadows from the woods whispered behind them, a distant hum now, fading into nothing as they stepped toward a new dawn. They had fought together, and together they had triumphed. As they walked back toward camp, their spirits lifted, laughter broke the solemn silence. Behind them, the woods stood ominous, but Jake knew something had shifted. He was free. But the woods wouldn't forget. This wouldn't be the last of their twisted games. "Hey, man, what now?" Billy asked, grinning wide, sunlight kissing their skin. "Now," Jake replied, determination etching his voice. "Now we spread the word. We need to warn everyone." As they reached their camp, the unease of the past few days settled deep within them but carried a sense of victory. The fight against darkness had united them, and, for now, they could face whatever lay ahead with new conviction. Now, listen up. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that dive deeper into the unknown. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to make your voice heard. True fans know the importance of standing united not just in stories, but in our lives too.